To the right of him is Yolanda Pascal, which is our budget chief for the department. And then to my left is our chief administrative officer, Peter Amon. And then to his left is Marshall Freeman, our deputy chief administrative officer. As we present the budget for this year, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, we want to note that it is aligned with the mayor's 4 pillars, which we have aligned them with. This is important that as we look for a safe city, a city that is built for all, the technology and is ethical city government that this police department is doing as part to fulfill the mayor's mission. You're going to see in this budget this year new initiatives are being brought out to fulfill the mayor's pillars of his vision for our city, and you're going to see that we are striving to continue to be the trusted and effective police department that we must be as we serve all 245 neighborhoods of our city. Last year, we conducted as an executive leadership team a leadership retreat where we looked at where we could be most effective in serving the citizens of Atlanta. And we developed departmental priorities. There were 4 of those priorities: to grow the Atlanta Police Department back to its authorized strength, to ensure that we're investing in our officers and how we compensate them, how we reward them for their service to our city, provide them the tools they need to be successful, and making sure they are appreciated members of our team. To be a smart crime-fighting organization, ensuring that we're doing all that we can do within the police department's purview to impact crime across the city, both property crime as well as crime against persons, to ensure that we continue to invest in our mission of being a 21st century policing agency, and to ensure that we are a department of excellence. As you look through this budget, you will see we are investing in our people, in our strategies, as well as the technology to ensure that we're serving the citizens of Atlanta and all the neighborhoods that you represent. Just going to start with the organization of the Atlanta Police Department. You will note that last year's budget, we placed in there the plan to reorganize the police department to move a number of operations that were being led by sworn leadership under a civilian umbrella. That was our chief administrative officer branch. We moved our processes, finance, budgeting, facilities, technology, strategic planning, 911 center, code enforcement were all moved in there to ensure that we were able to create stable and professional leadership over each of those to avoid turnover in those areas, ensure we had individuals that were properly trained to be able to lead those areas. So that has been successful. It's still underway. But you can see by the representation of this table, Mr. Chairman, that we have been onboarding talent into the police department that has affected in a positive manner of how vehicles are purchased, how facilities are acquired and prepared for the use of the men and women of the police department. That is continuing through our technology, our strategic planning and other areas. We anticipate when this process is done, we may have near 40 sworn personnel that have been able to be returned to crime fighting and able to return to community engagement initiatives that before they were filling in civilian roles or roles that were more around administrative and professional areas. This has been successful, and we will continue that as we move through this year's budget. I want to highlight some of the successes for the fiscal year that we are in and nearing the close of. As we brief you this morning, we are pleased to see a trend that started last year that is continuing into the last part of the fiscal year is a reduction of around our crimes around persons. As of this morning, we're looking at approximately a 25% decrease in crimes against persons. That is seen in our homicide rate, which is now about 38% lower than it was this time last year. Our rapes, aggravated assaults in the city continue to be lower, as well as robberies. That is because of our focus on gangs, guns, and drugs, and ensuring that we are focused on people and specific places in the city that we know have the potential to drive violent crime. We also want to note that the Zone 2 precinct that serves the northern portion of the city, the Buckhead communities, they were the recipient of the Crime Reduction Award as we ended 2022. That was a second year that precinct achieved that distinction. So we want to thank the officers in that precinct, our professional staff that supports them, the officers that work out of Public Safety Headquarters, and of course our community partners that are present there for contributing to that. We also saw a reduction in our 911 answer times occurring this year. We were contending with about a 31-second average answer time at our 911 center. As we brief you this morning, that has been lowered to 12 seconds. And we're going to continue to invest in technology in that space, as well as the individuals that work very, very hard out of our 911 center, the wonderful men and women that serve there, call taking, dispatching, the various support services to ensure that they are being properly provide the equipment to continue to lower that answer time, as they are truly the first responders in the public safety network. So other highlights from this past year is the acquisition of 2 new helicopters. If you watch us on social media, please follow us on Instagram or Facebook. You will notice our air assets are used for a variety of reasons. We use our air assets to look for lost children, wandering at-risk adults who may be suffering from dementia. We also use our helicopter to be able to go after fleeing felons, street racers, a wide variety of public safety challenges that may exist that our air unit, which is second to none in the business in our state, is able to be used to bring about our safe neighborhoods. We also use our air assets to protect the large-scale events that we are so proud of hosting here in the city. From the Pride Parade to the Peachtree Road Race to all of the music festivals that occur, our air assets are key to us to being able to provide safe environments. And even including just 2 weekends ago, when we had so many people in the downtown space enjoying the various concerts and sporting events, the air assets were important to that. We also saw a significant growth in our technology, particularly around Connect Atlanta, with a number of new cameras that were installed and integrated, as well as registered into the system. I'll get to more of that very shortly. And then, of course, the take-home car program. As we work to ensure that we retain the best and brightest in the law enforcement business, that we recruit the best and brightest in the law enforcement business, a take-home car program is key to that. I want to thank the mayor, his administration, and this body for your support. As of now, we have 40 cars that have been distributed throughout the city. These are officers that reside in your neighborhoods, that reside in your districts. They serve the zones to protect you, and we will continue to fill out our take-home car program until we have all officers that live in the city that are assigned to field operations have a vehicle, and then we'll continue to work for others that reside in the county and adjoining counties until that is complete. So thank you to the mayor and to this body for supporting that initiative. I'm going to go into the numbers in this year's budget, looking at a few things that you can see there in the book. Noting that this year the proposed budget would be $247,442,527. You can notice a couple distinctions there. You will see some small decreases in the airport and E911 portions of the budget. That is because of a reallocation of the pension, contribution, and other benefits that have led to that decrease. And finance can speak more to that in detail. This decrease does in no way impacts our ability to provide for the protection of the airport and our protecting the world's busiest and most efficient and safest airport, or the operation of the 911 center. We continue to be strong in those areas, and the budget that is being proposed allows us to continue to provide the public safety infrastructure for the airport and to ensure that the 911 center is properly staffed and provided the equipment that it's needed to be the first line of defense for our city. You also note on that slide the vacancies that we currently have in the police department, both in our sworn as well as in our professional staff. We currently are at around 450 vacancies in the police department. That's in our sworn. I want to note that we are starting to see our attrition slow thanks to the mayor's 3 actions that was done last year, and really 4 actions. You had the retention bonus that was rolled out shortly after this budget started. You had the 9% raises that were given in January of this year, and you had the take-home car program. And then you have a very engaged mayor throughout the city visiting our precincts, our work sites, supporting the men and women that protects this city. That is key to us filling the remaining vacancies to get back to a fully staffed police department as we prepare to host the world, literally once again here in our city in 2026 for the World Cup. And so we're excited for that initiative, and we thank the mayor for laying the groundwork and this body for supporting those initiatives that will allow us to build back. We are still an organization that will continue to hire quality candidates to wear the uniform. We can never become a profession that is about quantity. We have to remain to be a quality organization, and we're looking forward to continue to recruit there and to invest in our civilian professionals. We have some of the most dedicated men and women that serve in our public safety headquarters, out at the annex, in the 911 center, that do not wear a badge, but whose dedication is no less and whose importance to our public safety mission is not in any way different from the men and women that wear the badge. They are in 911, crime scene techs, they are our analysts, they are administrative personnel, they are our GCIC, they are crime prevention inspectors. So we will continue to invest in them in proper equipment, compensation, as we grow those vacancies back as well. Just looking at the general fund, as you will know, while airport and E911 saw small decreases, you will see an increase in the general fund request for this year to support the Atlanta Police Department. That will be $11.7 million over what was budgeted this time last year through this process, and that is appearing in a couple of areas. As you know, the actions of this administration to invest in our officer salaries, also salary adjustments that occurred under the previous administration, continue to be funded as we move forward. The men and women that serve on this department are our most valuable asset. We'll speak about technology today. You often see technology at work in your district, but I never want to lose focus of the fact that it's the men and women that make our department special, make our department effective, and make our department trusted. So the increase that you see in this year's budget continues to invest in those salaries that was laid out to ensure that as we look around and we see many jurisdictions wishing to hire Atlanta police officers, that we can keep them right here in our city serving the neighborhoods they have grown to know and to love. You also see in the general fund increases the vehicles that we're purchasing, and thank you all for that, and thank you to the mayor. The helicopter purchases that was referenced earlier are also seeing that general fund increase. Also, the camera maintenance and the installation of new cameras throughout the city is reflected in that increase, as well as our Axon agreement. You all recently enacted what will be a game changer in the Atlanta Police Department, allowing to bring on technology assets that we currently do not have, allowing us to move away from the paper that we still find ourselves dependent on in 2023 to become a more of a paperless department, and to be able to have processes in place that the citizens see a proper and effective police department. So while we'll have a short period of time where those contracts are overlapping, and as we proceed, those contracts will start to fall off as redundant services, and we will see the Axon agreement pick those up. And you're going to see that in a number of areas around e-citation, around eliminating the papers of our OPS area, better crime tracking, the ability to push data out more quickly to the officers that patrol your neighborhoods. Our investigators will all be supported by the Axon agreement, which is reflected in the general fund increases that you see this year. And just of an interesting note, if you look at FY21 through FY24, as we have invested in the police department, that has on average been a 3.5% annual growth rate within our budget, which is obviously below the current inflation rate that we're currently experiencing here in the country. Just to dig a little bit into the general fund operations of what you see there and where those increases are, as stated before, the number one area where our budget goes is to the men and women that work around the clock, 24 hours a day, all holidays. They are the ones that will not be able to go to the parades and the concerts and the large events that we protect because they are there protecting it. So 83% of our budget remains our men and women. And that is our men and women that are driving the patrol cars, doing the dangerous warrants, the men and women that are in our 911 center, that are throughout the administrative portions. That is where we are placing our resources, and we will look forward to working with you in the administration to continue to invest in those areas. And thank you all for investing in the pay scale and the raises of those that serve right here in Atlanta. Where else you'll see that increase in our general fund is in the camera maintenance. Cameras and license plate readers are a vital part of our public safety mission. And again, if you follow us on social media, you will see we're using our cameras to locate homicide perpetrators that are in the city. Officers that are on virtual patrol from workstations are able to see individuals that are wanted for homicide. Vector the units in so we can make the safest apprehension possible, that we do not endanger the community where we must make the arrest, and we make sure that we do not actually endanger the person that we're striving to arrest, that we're able to do that in the safest manner. Those cameras also continue to be used to investigate crimes from street racing to carjacking to package thefts, and again, missing children and at-risk adults who have wandered from home. So you will continue to see in this budget as we do invest in that camera infrastructure, and we thank you for supporting the integration into that system. Also reflected there is the Axon overlap. As we onboard Axon and we start eliminating existing contracts, you'll start seeing that fall off, and the savings that are in that contract will start being seen at the same time that we're elevating the efficiency of the police department. Also, when there are increased fueling and maintenance costs under the interfund charges, that is present as the normal course of the raising costs to do business in the city, and to provide a robust all-encompassing public safety mission of the police department, and then as well as the financing for the cars that you all have invested in and the helicopters that the administration has brought forth to making sure they're paying for those as we roll those out. And we're excited that as you see that new police car design, and thank you to SCAD for that investment in your partnership, you will start seeing more and more of those appearing in your neighborhoods in the areas that you serve. And do know that we have started with officers that reside in the city that answer 911 calls, so you'll be seeing those not only in your precinct, but in the driveways, the parking decks, throughout the various neighborhoods and districts. The priorities, in addition to just the personnel that we are investing in, we want to keep who we have. We want to continue to recruit talents. Just going to go through some of the priorities that exist in this year's budget. Growing Connect Atlanta is there. We are currently at 16,000 registered cameras and 15,000 integrated cameras. As you all well know, 2 weeks ago when we were looking for the shooter in Midtown, it was the cameras that were very, very key in us quickly being able to identify who the shooter was, being able to quickly identify where they had went, and to be able to work with our neighboring jurisdictions. It's interesting that the same technology platform that this city acquired happened to be the same platform that Cobb County has. And so the ability to move into the space, we're excited to see that DeKalb and Clayton and others will soon be joining, thanks to UASI, the same technology platform, because we see individuals that would tend to do harm move. They don't stay right in Atlanta. They move across county lines and city lines. This investment in this budget allows us to continue to invest in Connect Atlanta to be able to quickly mitigate individuals that may want to cause harm in our city. You're also going to see an investment in the co-responder pilot program in 2 areas in this budget. As you are aware, we are the #1 responders to a mental health emergency. It was 2 years ago that we responded to well over 8,000 persons in a mental health crisis. 8,000 as a police department. I'm pleased to report that because we do training in our training center, that is the exact same amount of time that it takes to become a proficient on your firearm. This police department has training and curriculum to ensure that we commit the same amount of training for a mental health crisis as we do how to discharge your weapon. Because we will encounter a person in a mental health crisis daily in our city, whereas many of our officers will never, ever discharge their weapon other than in training as they serve this city. And I think it's important to note. So while we do have very well-trained officers in the area of mental health, we are going to embark on a true co-responder program where we hire, in this budget, mental health professionals who their skill set, their passion, their expertise of what they do is to be able to mitigate a mental health emergency, to be able to assist in de-escalation, and to ensure that we take that individual to appropriate care facility, that we're able to get the support that individual needs, and we're able to divert from the criminal justice system that is not the best suited means to be able to provide for an individual in a mental health crisis. This program will start with 6 mental health professionals. We will assign 1 to each zone in the city to start working around key times, key challenges, key trends that may be unique to your particular district to ensure that we have that mental health resource available. We believe that's going to do a number of things. It's going to ensure that we cut down on the reoccurring 911 calls around individuals where their core cause may be a mental health emergency. We're going to start seeing us growing the trust with the community because they will see a response from the police department that isn't constricted to just the law and what we're allowed to do under the state statutes and the city ordinances, but we're bringing with us a unique response that is not that standard tradition of the law and the law only. So we're excited about this pilot program and where this exists in the budget to be able to start on a true mental health co-responder program. And this is just the beginning, members of council. This is our pilot. This is our initial investment, and we will start building on those individuals that we're bringing on this budget to ensure that this police department is a trendsetter, that this city is recognized as one that understands the complexity of mental health around many of the calls that we are called to through our 911 center, through React, as you as council members, as you look at the challenges in your district, there's often a heavy mental health presence there in a lot of the matters that you reach out to us to and ask for resolving and solving. So this will also strengthen us understanding what other resources are available outside of just Grady psychiatric care and just a detention center. It's going to allow us to grow the number of community-based resources that we can refer to, and it will influence our officers to be more competent and compassionate and caring in those spaces. And then this civilian traffic unit. You know, a traffic accident, I know you would believe this on a rainy day or as you're driving home to and from work, traffic accidents on some day can be the #1 911 call that we respond to. Traffic accidents, right? And so we are going to start doing what we've seen done as best practices in other cities. We want to bring in a civilian traffic unit, somewhat similar to HERO. And I think when you saw this morning on the news, you may have seen that the state is actually cutting back its funding for the HERO unit. So I think this is a timely investment of where we can use city resources to be able to create a team with under the police department's umbrella to respond to individuals that may be in a broken down car, a vehicle, where we know we can start freeing up 911 resources. We can put trained individuals in place to quickly mitigate the traffic matter, the traffic accident, certain ones they will be able to complete the reports for, and we will be able to keep this group of individuals moving quickly to keep patrol assets in your neighborhoods and throughout the city. And we believe this too will be a start of an area where the citizens of Atlanta will see their government effectively serving them and protecting them in a way where we can use non-sworn resources in this area to free them up for crime fighting where we need them throughout the city. So we're excited about these two co-responder pilot programs that you see in the budget this year. We think you'll start seeing the benefits in your districts right away, and we look forward to seeing that grow throughout the year. Also, a priority in this year's budget is our transparency. I've said it before, we have to be two things at all times to the citizens of Atlanta and to you as members of our elected legislative body. We have to be effective at what we do, and we have to be trusted. And so what you will see in this year's budget is the Axon program that allows us to add more transparency. We will be developing more dashboards that will allow us to quickly see where use of force is being used, how it's being used. Is it proper? Is it aligned with training? Is it aligned with the public expectation? Just to give you an example, in 2021, we had 728,808 unique interactions with citizens. Now, that's not how many citizens we interacted with, because I will give you an example. Some protests that we go to will have 6,000 to 7,000 individuals in that public space, but we track that as one incident that the department manages. The Peachtree Road Race will count for one of those 728,000. And as we look at those, we know of all those interactions that we had, 0.07% required any force to be used by a member of the Atlanta Police Department. Think about that. Because by the time we put every individual that is into those 728,000 interactions, we're well over 1 million people. And 0.07% requires any force to be able to mitigate that situation. It speaks to the quality of the training and the character of the men and women that protect our city. And of those, only 2.6% of that 0.07% required cause any type of complaint to be made to the Atlanta Police Department that the force was inappropriate or excessive. I have a commitment as a chief of police to ensure that no one wears this uniform that should not wear this uniform, because we do damage to this city. We do damage to this profession from coast to coast if we allow the wrong individuals to wear the Atlanta Police Department uniform. By investing in the technology in this budget, we're able to quickly identify areas we need to focus in on through training, through discipline, and potentially removal of that individual from the police force. So this allows us to have much better transparency into how we protect the city, because the good men and women of this police department, the vast majority that wear this uniform, they want to be represented by what is just about this profession, and they do not want to be identified with those small elements that may not stand up to the same standard and uphold the oath that the men and women of this police department does. And we'll continue to use our body-worn camera system, which is heavily invested in this particular budget, to allow us to do weekly and monthly audits of our body-worn cameras to ensure that we're looking for better training opportunities, individuals that may not be standing up to the oath of their office, and to be able to craft better training opportunities. And we also use those body-worn cameras to quickly connect back to our investigators. There's many times that our investigators, while they're still responding to the scene or in the office, use our body-worn camera infrastructure to join the crime scene, to see what the individual is wearing, to see if the person we have detained is the individual that we want to see. So the ability to be efficient and transparent in all of our actions is present in this budget. and also is our non-traditional crime fighting and our private sector partnerships. I mentioned already our co-responder around mental health emergencies and our civilian traffic unit, but also present is our ability to have our partnerships as we have now with Kia and Hyundai. As you're aware, that is pushing crime in the city right now. This allows us to continue to invest in the vehicle wheel locks that are occurring, will be occurring this week in many of your districts throughout the city. It allows us to invest in our court watch and our neighborhood watch, our crime infringement inspectors. We want to be a police department that's looking for something to do, and we want to be a police department that is working in the space of equipping our businesses and our neighborhoods to reduce crime wherever it may be occurring so it doesn't happen in the first place. And we know this is a city that you are safe in and that you feel safe in. So this particular budget allows us to invest in those non-traditional crime-fighting opportunities and invest in our private partnerships around our PAL centers, our At Promise centers. As we continue to support the Mayor's Year of the Youth, this budget does that, and I thank you all for supporting those initiatives around the youth throughout our city. How will we determine our key metrics, and how are we being effective to be good stewards of the public dollars and to ensure that we are being held accountable in how we serve the city and your expectations as members of the City Council? Those metrics are in key areas. First and foremost, it is crime fighting. We are a crime fighting organization. Last year, we embarked on an effort to target the gangs, the guns, and the drugs that we knew were impacting the City of Atlanta. There are certain crime trends that we cannot impact. I cannot be present when the fight breaks out over who was the one doing the most work in the apartment. And I use that as an example because last week in our city, we had an individual that was shot by his roommate because there was a fight over who was doing the most work in the apartment. We cannot be present in those spaces. We need families and faith communities, civic organizations to be about the business of elevating the civility of our society to help us fight those. But what your police department does do, and does do well, is work with our partners to combat gangs, guns, and drugs. And when we look at where we put the money that is on our budgets, where we put our equipment, our men and women, that is what we're going after to dismantle. If you are running a gang operation in the City of Atlanta, you will meet your police department. And when we arrive at your door, we'll be joined by our federal partners, our state partners, and our county partners, and we are going to shut you down. And if you're running a drug dealing operation in the city, which was likely to be the third highest motivator for homicides in your districts, we are going to shut you down. And when we arrive at your door to remove your guns and your drugs, we'll be joined by our federal partners, our state partners, and our county partners. That is what is reflected in this budget, and that is how we will hold ourselves accountable. Just to give you one statistic, we have increased our gang charges 80% last year and already this year of bringing gang charges to deconstruct operations around car thefts, robberies, human trafficking. All across the city is the work that we're being done. So you continue to see us doing that area, and that will show in our reduction around homicides, as well as aggravated assaults, robberies, and gangs. We will continue to impact our youth and invest in our PAL programming, increasing the number of individuals that are enrolled in there, and we need your help again. We still have some vacancies in our summer programs, so please allow us, if you could help us recruit in those areas. We'll also be investing in our APLI, the Atlanta Police Leadership Training. For us to be truly effective and trusted, it's not about the gun and the badge. It's about us knowing the communities that we're protecting, respecting the communities that we're protecting, developing relationships and partnerships that are long-lasting, that are there in times of peace and content, so when we reach critical points in our city that we have already established those relationships to be able to survive them. We are a safe city when we're all working together, and this budget allows us to continue to invest in our leadership training at the APLI. For you to rise to the next level in this organization, you must complete programming that involves volunteering in the communities of Atlanta. You must complete programming that involves sitting down across from communities that we are working to build trust back with and that we need the confidence of to be able to succeed. You're required to do those things to be able to go to the next level of leadership, and this budget allows us to do this. And other key matrix will be around the technology. We will continue to grow the number of cameras and license plate readers. We will continue to make sure they're in the right spaces at the right time, move them when necessary, and using the technology to be in that space and about that business, and in growing the capacity of a real-time crime-fighting center. It is truly becoming a network, and I encourage you to visit our real-time crime center known as the VIC, but if you truly want to see it in action, it is on this phone. It is on the computer of every police car in the city. It is on the desktop of everyone that serves and wears the badge or is a professional member of this department. That is truly our real-time crime-fighting network. That is reflected in this budget, and it also is one of the key metrics of accountability that we have. And so, Chairman Wan and members of the council, thank you for this opportunity to give a very quickly and at a very high level overview of our budget this year. We hope you see where our focus will be as we protect your communities and your district, and we want to be able to answer any questions that you may have that may be of value through this process.
Thank you, Chief. I want to acknowledge that we've been joined since you began the presentation by council members Boone, Overstreet, Lewis, and Norwood. We'll go ahead and open it up for questions. I have a queue going of Hillis, Lewis, Overstreet, Shipman, and we'll start there. So, Councilmember Hillis, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chairman Wan. Thank you, Chief Sherbaum, for the presentation. I'll try to start with the easy stuff. I know we just did at least a portion of a department reorganization and bringing in Mr. Amon and Mr. Freeman on the administrative side of things. What further reorganization do you plan on doing in this fiscal year 24?
We're going to continue in that space. You will start seeing it develop around our technology. Our technology section is still heavily led by sworn individuals. And so you'll continue to see technology be filled out with individuals that is their area of expertise. Also around recruiting and our HR areas, that will also be the next area that we'll be going into. And then around our strategic planning. That too is still staffed primarily by sworn members of the department. That will allow us to start investing in programming and projects to retain who we have and grow the police department, ensuring that we're using technology. Right now, the technology investment is heavily in the area of crimes against person, and so we know that has been effective here. We'll continue to use the reorganization and the build-out to move into areas around property crimes, mental health response, where else can co-responder models work within the Atlanta Police Department. And so it will be those areas, Councilmember Hillis. It will be technology, it will be strategic planning, and it will be HR and recruitment.
Thank you for that. Next is what is the timeline for the rollout of the paperless citations?
So I believe it's going to be around
It's 9 months.
9 months for that, yes, 9 months. And I think this is why this is important. I hope none of you have received a citation from the Atlanta Police Department, but let's say, just for sake of discussion, that you have. That is a handwritten document, Councilmember Hillis, where the officer must write hard enough to be able to permeate a number of copies that are distributed to the courts, to be able to manually input what that court date is, for the citizen to read what that court date is. Every citizen has a right to challenge that citation. So what we know is our officers are spending time completing their duties, filling out paper when they could quickly complete it, be back in service for the next 911 call. So they no longer have to go through that arduous process. We also know that there is likely citizens that cannot read that citation that says, what is my court date? That we want there to be no question about when they can arrive and execute their constitutional right to require us to prove the offense. And when an individual of the court clerks is inputting that information, the same challenge remains. So this program we're excited about. It will make us move into more of a paperless position. It will be more fair to the citizens that may want to contest a citation. It will be much more easier for officers to return to duty and to be able to use tools that are basically at play right now by ATL Plus and the Georgia State Patrol that are also in the city working, and it will bring us on par with the first class. So we will be informing your committee as we move forward for that 9 month window. But this is something that is going to win at many, many different levels. Fairness, proper use of taxpayer dollars. I look forward to the day that we can eliminate the ticket book, the paper one, from the stockpiles of the Atlanta Police Department.
And will this cover citations and notices issued by non-sworn officers like code enforcement as well?
My vision is, sir, that we'll go all across the department. We want to be able to use it in a manner that allows us to be effective. And so where we see paper present as a charging document to inform the court and the citizen, our vision, that will be paperless as well. And what we also need to note is our ability to track data through that, because right now individuals have to actually go through and count citation by citation to determine certain key vital statistics that we'd want to know about our enforcement efforts or the individuals that we may be encountering. We will see that real time through an e-citation program to have those statistics that will help influence our accreditation. We are required to maintain those to remain an accredited law enforcement agency. So e-citation, while it looks on the forefront just to be a paperless initiative, allows us to also maintain our accreditation and to be able to study data in a manner that makes us effective, trusted, and to ensure that we're properly enforcing the law in Atlanta.
Understood. Thank you. Next is the crime lab expansion. We've talked about this some, but for those who may not know, tell me a little bit about what the crime lab's current limitations are, what you currently do at the crime lab, what the expansion will cover, and how that will assist the department, and anything else you want to include there.
So we're fortunate, and if you've ever been part of our Citizens Police Academy, you'll visit here. We do maintain a crime lab at our annex on Donnelly Hollowell. And so at that location is the ability to do fingerprint analysis. Drug testing used to be done there in a manner that we were not dependent on the GBI. We've lost that capability, and so now we must depend on the Georgia Bureau of Investigation to test any drugs that are seized here in Atlanta, and then the testing of firearms. We now require a second individual to be able to confirm the findings of our professionals are at that location. And so as we do grow out a crime lab expansion, it will be adding personnel that is able to test drugs at that location, to be able to do the second confirmation on a ballistics hit, if you will, and to ensure that we have proper staff around the fingerprints. Now, the district attorney has been very clear about this, and I think this is important. When we raid a drug location in your district, sometimes we come out with heroin, we come out with methamphetamines, we come out with cocaine and marijuana, and because of the staffing limitations at the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, they're only able to test one of those drugs and return those to the district attorney. So despite the risk that was done by the Atlanta Police Department and our partners to identify that drug dealing operation and close it, what the district attorney is able to prosecute is not the case that our police officers created. And so by investment over time in our crime lab, we will be able to test all drugs of drug dealing operations here in the city to ensure the district attorney can actually prosecute the cases that we bring before her.
What is the timeline? Is that something that will happen the first day of the fiscal year? Is this going to be a slow rollout over
This will play out over time, right? We have to hire the right people, and we have to acquire the right equipment, so it will play out over time. And we can give you more definitive timelines as they're known to us.
Okay. Another conversation we've had a few times is the limitations that you currently have with your GCIC techs, just a staffing challenge, I imagine, and a pay challenge there, which has created that staffing challenge. So what do you see happening in fiscal year 24 to try to fix that issue and fill that gap?
Two areas. You're going to see, obviously, investment in our personnel. We'll continue to hire in those positions. That is a priority. But I think it's also important to note as we embark on e-citation, there is going to be the ability to transfer certain individuals that are doing tasks related to the citations in the police department and even potentially within municipal court to be able to allow those individuals to fulfill those roles also. So I think as we move through e-citation rollout, and we will see the ability to move individuals into GCIC that may not currently fill those positions, and then the prioritization of us to make sure that we're remaining competitive with the pay scale to hire into those positions.
Thank you. Another issue is I am wanting to invest probably at least $200,000 or more on my personal budget, Chairman Warner, not a budget amendment. I don't want you having palpitations or anything, but wanting to expand the PTZ cams, LPRs in my district, just using some stories. I oversaw the rollout of District 9's program when I worked for my predecessor, and one of those cameras, and I'm sure many of them have been used for solving various crimes, one of the highest was a murder that occurred, I believe, about a year or two ago. But then we had an off-duty Fulton County deputy that was shot and killed, and there were no cameras or pan-tilt zoom cameras or LPRs within pretty large distance of where that occurred. But I've had struggles getting the information I used to get fairly readily from the Atlanta Police Foundation and providing me maps of the current cameras and PTZs and any priority locations that APD has identified where there are gaps or they want cameras. I mean, I can certainly look at crime maps and camera maps and see where the gaps are, but I know you all have priority locations as well. So I know you've stolen a few staff members from them, but they may have some staffing challenges, but I need that information whether APD wants to provide it or APF wants to provide it, because like I said, there are camera gaps, I know in my district and probably other districts where I want to roll out these devices. So is that something you all can look into, and whether you all do it or APF does it?
We can assist you with that. If it's not from us, we'll make sure that you get that, council member, and we appreciate your investment in the public safety infrastructure.
Definitely. And on that, a few budget years ago, during the last term, APD tried to take on maintenance of those cameras, and it was a disaster. What is the current responsibilities of APD? What's the current responsibilities of APF when it comes to the camera program, especially when it comes to making sure the cameras are operational, doing maintenance of those cameras, et cetera?
So currently, the cameras, I believe it's a 4-year window that they're handed off to the...
On the fourth year?
Yes, on the 4th year. So the Atlanta Police Foundation, once they're installed, maintains them for the first 3 years. And then on the 4th year, it is handed off for the police department, the city be able to maintain those, which we track and we monitor. It's reflected in the budget, our ability to be able to keep those up and operational. Now, the normal down rate of the cameras is generally less than 5%. Because of Fusus, we are able to quickly see the cameras that are up or down immediately. That report is readily available to us, and we dispatch teams out to be able to make those repairs. Sometimes it's an easy repair, sometimes a little bit more complicated, but we do have a plan in place to replace and upgrade those devices that need to be upgraded, and keep an eye on those that would need to be repairs.
Next question is, there's been major issues, and I know the department as a whole has major issues with staffing, but particularly our non-sworn staffing and code enforcement inspectors. We're supposed to have, I believe, 25 code enforcement officers, and I think we're down to 6, 7, 8 maybe, if that. And so that severe lack of staffing is showing, in that, it's taking longer to do inspections, follow-up inspections, demos. When we went to a NREM administrative hearing, we were told, back when I started working for the city back in 2015, and previously for my neighborhood before that, we were told it would be 3 to 4 months after that order was issued that the house would come down. That is not just an eyesore, but it's a danger to the community. It's a danger to our city workers, particularly firefighters, who are often called to these structures, and they have to make sure there are no individuals inside of those. We're seeing 9 to 12 months now from after the order is issued to get those demolitions. So what is the plan to beef up that staffing, both in-house? I hope there's a plan to increase those non-sworn salaries, focus on recruiting and code enforcement, but then also in the meantime, we're not going to make that happen today or next week or even next month. Our planning department, they brought in outside inspectors to handle a lot of this when their staffing challenges arose. Is that something you all are looking into as well?
So a couple of things, council member. Obviously, the pay and class study that's currently underway includes our civilian talent within the Atlanta Police Department. We are the largest municipality in Georgia, so we are excited about the pay and class study to ensure that we are competitive across the board to be able to recruit and retain talent. So that will lay the groundwork for a more long-term stability of the staffing in code enforcement. In the meantime, there's a couple of things that the police department is doing. Number one is adding this particular job in our job fairs. So when you go visit the job fairs for our department, you will not only see the sworn, you see 911, you see other civilian positions that we're able to put out that we are hiring in that area. When we have individuals that for a variety of reasons may not be able to pass the required training to be a sworn law enforcement officer, within our current training mechanisms, we do provide opportunities for those individuals to continue to serve the city and serve the police department. Code enforcement is one of those areas, so we will continue as we move through the training cycle of the year when we have the opportunity to have individuals join that we will. And then I mentioned our strategic planning unit that we're setting up under the reorganization, the ability to how can we use more creative talent acquisition models to be able to continue to serve the city is on there, Councilmember Hill. So that will be even a benefit of the reorganization to be able to look for models that you just referenced. Do we have the ability to bring in individuals not through the traditional hiring means to be able to fulfill our obligation for inspections?
Understood.
Yeah, if I could add just to your point, we did put out a solicitation for external sort of surge capacity or emergency capacity. So we did create an RFP, put out a solicitation, did not receive any responses. So we may try that again, but at the same time, we have given discretionary raises in the chief's ability of 10% to those positions. And I believe in the personnel paper, there's another increase specified. So we are very conscious. This is a real area where we need, sort of urgent improvements in staffing. So,
Understood. And HR had their presentation yesterday, and I told the commissioner that I'm also excited about the pay and class study, but I'm excited for when it actually gets adopted in 2 or 3 years, and the data is already 2 years old at that point. So we have to look at these where we're having major issues, just like use the planning example. Planning provided raises for their inspectors and plan reviewers through a conversation and meeting with the HR commissioner, because we just can't wait when we have this severe level of understaffing. So if that
we're doing that. So
okay,
we're doing
I was
exactly
about to say, if that conversation has not been had with the HR commissioner, I would request that it happen.
Yeah. It has, and it's in process.
How, and this is a responsibility across many city departments, but how does APD assist in holding problem properties accountable? We've seen the AJC cover particularly apartments and their dangerous dwellings series. We have gas stations that crimes continually occur at, just problem properties. And I really like to see more action taken against those. I mean, we have locations that, their number of aggravated assaults in a year are in the double digits or more. How do you track that, and how do you communicate? Because again, this is an interdepartmental effort. You all, fire inspections, code enforcement, the planning side of code enforcement, et cetera. So how do you all interface with that and track those properties?
Yeah, because we work very closely, obviously, with the solicitor's office. I do want to commend them at this point for the work they've been doing tirelessly to address, in many cases, shutting down problems in the city that, because of a variety of reasons, we're breeding crime in Atlanta. And so this department provides its resources that is needed for inspections, anytime that we make a report, issue a citation that is immediately provided to the solicitor's office. On days that there are court hearings to address these issues, we will have homicide investigators present. We will have the officer from the Morning Watch present. We will ensure that we have individuals that are present in the courtroom to be able to tell the true story that is occurring. And so the ability to work closely with the solicitor's office to provide all the information that they need to be able to prosecute the cases, to bring them to trial, to craft judicial, because at the end of the day, it will be a judge that will help us resolve these matters, right? We wish it was solely within the purview of the Atlanta Police Department. I think we have an enforcement role that we need to make sure is properly applied, that it is occurring in a manner that it's equitable, but yet effective in shutting down and addressing locations that may be operating outside the law that are affecting the livability and the safety of our neighborhoods. So it's an ongoing effort every day. It's mentioned at our COBRA. We're pleased to say that the city solicitor's office is present every Thursday in our COBRA meetings as they look to see how they can complement the efforts that we are going on and inform us of how we, as a law enforcement body, can use all of our divisions to support their efforts in the courtroom to address problem locations.
All right. Chair and Chief, I'll make this my last question. Monday was my birthday, and I've yet to receive my birthday present from APD.
Oh, my goodness.
Which was a zone and beat realignment, at least a draft. Where are we with that?
I'll have to get with UPS to see where your president is, council member. But we believe we're going to have it this month. Obviously, we want this to be accurate. We do want to thank Georgia Tech for working with us on the effort to make sure we have the right beat zone and zones drawn properly. We still anticipate having that this month, council member. If that is not met, we'll inform this body, certainly PSLA, of that occurrence. But now that I know it is your birthday present, I'll make sure I have the right size bow on it when it arrives.
I'll have to look and see what the daily interest rate on
Okay.
the delivery is. So.
Happy birthday.
Thank you, Chief, and your team, and all the officers, from recruits all the way up to our chief, for the work y'all do day in and day out. It's much appreciated.
Councilmember Lewis.
Hey, Chief, I want to say thank you for coming today and the team. I have a couple of questions. I wanted to start with does this budget have the lockbox funding for legislation 22R4798 that this council passed? That the mayor's office, that the police would find funding for lock boxes for folks in the city of Atlanta, because as we see, a lot of guns are still being stolen from cars. I know we've moved with speed to get the deal done with Kia and folks to make sure that these stolen cars are taken care of, but the guns that are stolen in cars are just as bad as the cars that are being stolen. That's property. The guns are being used in these gang wars. So that's the first question.
Yes, sir, and we certainly share your concern, Councilmember, with the number of guns that are stolen throughout our city. While this particular budget doesn't have that specifically, we are mindful of the request, and we are actively exploring, as we speak, a number of opportunities through grants and other non-budgetary options to be able to obtain those lock boxes for distribution. What is included in here is a strong infrastructure of engagement with the community, so when we do acquire lock boxes and other tools, that we can quickly distribute them throughout the areas of need and within the community. So we certainly share your concern, and once we do acquire those through the other avenues that are being explored, they will be distributed through the personnel resources that are here.
And I'm hopeful that we can add it to the budget because the council passed it. And so it's something that was passed by this council, signed by a lot of members. So I thought it would be added to this budget. I'm getting a lot of phone calls from walking through this building and people asking me where can they pick up their lock boxes. So I would like to see it added to the budget because we passed it. I have a few more questions I want to go into. On the gangs, I've had some young folks that have reached out to me that told me that they've been charged in gangs just because. I know we're touting it and we know we're seeing stuff, but if they gave me a scenario where a young man was with his cousin, a fight broke out, he helped his cousin, they charged him with gang. A young man is a part of our City of Atlanta team program. He's an excellent young man. The teachers and the coaches have all called me and say, this young man is not in a gang. He's been held in jail since. And so he's now missed probably about 3 months of school. And so I want to be careful with the gang stuff because we had a war on drugs before that we got wrong. So this war on gangs where this young man is in this jail cell right now in the city of Atlanta, never been in jail in his life. In his life. And so, but he's in there and I'm getting these calls. So with the war on, I don't know what it is right now. I don't know if you use that term, but I want to make sure that we are careful as we do this, because this young man ain't never been in trouble. I know him. He ain't gang.
Yes, sir. The statute wouldn't allow us to charge under the scenario that was just described there. It is very specific of what has to be. There has to be two parts for the gang statute. The statute lays out how a person is identified as being aligned with the gang. So we must meet those elements, and then they must do something in furtherance of the gang. So there's a second part of that. So anytime we believe there has been a violation of that statute, we must present it to a judge and ask the judge, do they agree with our assessment? So fortunately, we don't live in a society, council member, where the police is the judge and the jury in these matters. In fact, for us to be able to arrest anybody on a misdemeanor or above, we actually have to have the permission of the judge to proceed with the arrest once we swear out the warrant. So in any particular case, gang statute is a felony. When we believe that we have met the elements that has been laid out, we go to a judge. We lay out in great detail to the judge the evidence that we have. If the judge doesn't agree, the person doesn't get arrested. If the judge does agree, then we do make the arrest, then it proceeds through the court system to ensure that another judge or jury also agrees with that. So we will never sidestep the safeguards that are in place. We will continue to use a judge reviewing all of our warrants to ensure that we've met the elements, and we agree with you. We don't believe anyone should be charged just because. We believe individuals should be charged when there is a need for the safety of the community, that the elements of the crime have been met, whether it's been laid out by this body or the General Assembly, and that we do so in a manner that is fair and equitable.
Okay, so that's top level, but this young man is still in jail. I'll get his name and I can go into detail about it, but also we have other young men who are being locked up and charged with gang, because once the charge, does the police put the charge on them and take it in?
Yes, sir. And
so once the charge is laid, they can't come home. Their mama can't go and get them out of juvenile once the gang is on them. I had another young man who spent the night at a family's house and went out that night, and they did break into cars and they stole guns. That's his first time ever going to that house in his life. He's in jail for gang. Man, ain't no, like, so, and some of the other people may have been, but it's his first time going over there. He's now in jail for gang. So I want to be careful with how we're labeling our young men as gang, because it seems to these parents, these young ladies who are calling me, there's a war on gangs, and it looked like the war on drugs that they had on their fathers. And that's how they're talking to me when they talk to me about it. So I want to first make sure that we're being careful with these young, because I understand cultures. And I understand how easily, when I was running for office, when I understand how I've had conversations with y'all about what I've seen police officers send to constituents in my district, right? Right? I've had conversations about what I've seen police officers send to, in text messages, constituents about in my district. So how we can label people, whatever we want to label people. So I want to be careful with our youth as we talk about the year of the youth, talk about how we helping people. We can't just label because they're from this, because one of them could be he's from Calmerton Road, he's from Cleveland Avenue. Could that be one of the area he's from? Is that one of the reasons? Is that something that you would use as an identifier?
Not at all, sir. And I would encourage, and we can provide a copy of the state statute. We do not wage war on communities. We fight violent crime.
Okay.
And we have a violent crime epidemic in this country that unfortunately finds its way into Atlanta, Georgia. And citizens die needlessly, and they die in manners that are just perplexing.
I understand death fully. My mother was murdered at 2 because of a gang war in Atlanta. Not a gang war, drug war. Miami-Atlanta drug war caused by a catastrophe in Miami where they had a hurricane and brought some folks up here. So I understand the full spectrum of it, full out. I understand how a house could have the Red Dogs kick into it every other week. So I understand how that goes, but we have young men that are 11, 13, 14, 15 years old being charged for gang, first time going to jail because that's the first time they broke into a car that night and they got caught with somebody. And so these are things that I'm getting. I'm getting these calls. These parents are really reaching out to me. So I know this is more about the budget and I'll move forward after that, but I wanted to make sure that we're being careful with our young men in this city, that we're just not saying gang.
We're not, the law doesn't allow us to do that, council member, and we would be more than happy to sit down with you and kind of walk through how we're protecting all the communities and how we're using the gang statute. It is purposely designed to ensure that it can't be used in a manner that is punitive or it is not for what it's designed for. And so please know you have my commitment that we will never do anything that damages the communities that we're protecting. And so we can walk through the statute. Well, we can't even charge an 11-year-old with a felony. And so there's a number of things that we can help provide information on that are accurate. Then we want to hear back from the communities too, to make sure we're doing things in a manner that is building the trust and in no way damaging it. So we would be glad to set that up and would like to sit down and walk through that efforts with you so you can see how we're protecting Atlanta.
Yes, sir. I'll get to more of the budget questions. How does this budget address the training and further development needs of code enforcement officers to ensure they have the necessary knowledge and skills to carry out their duties effectively?
Yes, sir. Within the budget is obviously the operations of our training arm of the police department. That training arm covers everyone from the members sitting at this table to our recruits all across the civilian staff. So as we continue to recruit into the code enforcement, as was provided in a previous answer, we use our training division to be able to identify best practices throughout the country that we bring here. And so that may look like a revision in hours, the content that's provided to them, as we identify new and proper ways to be effective in the code enforcement space or any other space of the Atlanta Police Department. It will start appearing in two areas. It begins in the basic training component, whatever that skill set is within the Atlanta Police Department. That's often called the recruit phase or basic training phase, or the initial skill set development, and then it appears every year in the reoccurring in-service. And some in-services are specific for a job within the police department, others are for different ranks, and so it will continue to appear that way. Every year it will look slightly different because every year we strive to be better and we adopt best practices. We learn from our own experiences here in the city, and as we continue to grow that opportunity to influence and gives tools to all that serve in the Atlanta Police Department, be it in code enforcement or any other area.
And lastly, I know last year I spoke about the city growing so much and we having a huge influx of people. My district is the largest district in the city with the least amount of people currently, but we have a huge influx coming with all these new development coming. Code enforcement officers, currently we have about 12 or 9 in the city. Can you give me the number if possible?
Vacancies.
So currently for code enforcement, I think there's 8 people who are in code enforcement, and it's woefully short, as we discussed before.
So I had a job fair in which everybody applied. I made sure I grabbed young ladies. I grabbed them. I grabbed young men. One young man I told you about, Mr. Amon. I haven't gotten back to you on that, but I made sure I grabbed folks, and I told them to apply for that job. This was in January, February. And so none of those folks were reached back out to. They actually were reached back out to by other folks. To have 8 code enforcement officers for the entire city of Atlanta, is there a plan to, first, because we're so far behind, how long have we been so short? Years, though, right?
Well, I think we've been short for some period of time, dating back before I got here, but there's a couple things we're doing. One, as I said, I believe there are increases in the personnel paper regarding pay, and we'll verify that, but I believe there is an increase. But secondly, we did have the job fair. We do have, I think, 11 people in background right now, 11 people, and I think that as they go through background, unfortunately, some of their backgrounds, because of these are folks who go out to properties, that go out to people's homes under certain, when invited, they will go inside somebody's home. So they do have to go through a pretty extensive background check because of the trust we place in them. But I think that of the 11, I think 9 are still active that we hope to be getting offers to. So that would be a significant increase in the numbers, and we're going to keep turning the crank on this. The job is permanently posted now, so it's always posted. And certainly, as I said to you when we talked, anybody that you have that you want to pass on, I'll make sure that they get to the recruitment unit, and I'll also find out why, if they did provide information, why they weren't called back.
So my questions are also, since we're so woefully short for so long, is there a plan to increase, because my district, we've been suffering. And we've been suffering for so long, it's crazy. I was just riding through this morning because I take Pryor Road in, and I was just riding past so many atrocities in my area. Is there a plan to increase staff, or could I suggest a plan to increase staff, probably double, at least for a year, so that we can catch up? Or is there a plan, or could I grab some money out of my budget, my discretionary budget, or to help increase some staff so that we can speed up? Because if we have 26 MPUs in the city of Atlanta, we need at least 1 code enforcement officer per MPU. Currently, what's the max amount of code enforcement officers can we have? Well,
there's 16 vacant funded positions and 11 vacant unfunded positions, on top of the positions we have filled. So to the specific point, yes, we certainly want to have those conversations. We do have a plan. As I said, we put a solicitation out to get to bring people in, sort of, you know how like hospitals have temporary nurses come in. It's not ideal, but it's better than not having a nurse. We tried that. We didn't have anybody respond. We didn't have any companies that provide that service respond. So based on that, the mayor's office actually allocated, I think, funding for 3 or 4 extra code enforcement officers to be added. So we do have extra funding right now. It is this hiring process, and that's why we do need to increase the pay.
And the folks that I knew that were applying for the job, they weren't complaining about the pay. They just wanted the job. Like they wanted that good job because they were entering into this job with like good benefits, so they weren't complaining about the pay. And so when people were getting a new job, they typically, from folks who I was bringing in, they were excited about the opportunity to get that position, and so they weren't having that issue. My last thing I would like to say is for my district, once we get up to speed, can I get a direct code enforcement officer per NPU for my districts? I have 3 in mind, and so I don't, because I'm gonna try to work on a paper to pass this week in council to make sure that we get one for per NPU, because we need somebody we can talk to. We don't need to be whoever is going to answer the phone this time. I want to work with one person, and I want somebody to focus on that stuff. I don't want them to always have to worry about other stuff in other parts of the city. So for my district, can you look at putting together a plan in which we can help fund, which my district can try to help fund, if we have to get a code enforcement officer for each of my NPUs in my district?
A part of the reorganization, Councilmember Lewis, is looking at our current delivery model for services. And so do we have the proper staffing and then how they're assigned as part of that? So we can provide you feedback once we know what that's going to look like and what the ratio would be and how it aligns with NPUs.
And I know government works real slow, so that's why I'm asking for that. I'm asking that once we hit our staff, not even can we just get somebody per NPU while we wait on that study to get back. And then that way you can get it in practice because you can see it just get better. Then that way you can implement it. We could be the test case.
Okay, let's explore that. We'll provide feedback.
I would love to explore that in my district because you're thinking about it right now, and I'm willing. Right. I'm willing to work with those code enforcement officers per NPU zone in my district. So thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, we've been joined by Councilmember Jason Dozier and Jason Winston. Quick time check, it is now 10:37. I do see the solicitors folks out here, but we're going to continue on. And I just ask the solicitor's office team members to be patient as we go through these important questions. I have Overstreet, Shipman, Shook, and Boone. So Councilmember Overstreet, you have the floor.
Thank you. Good morning. Thank you so much for that presentation. I don't think there's one person, any other person that could have gone through these slides like you did and communicated to us all of these details, so many details in that amount of time. So thank you for the presentation. Well, first of all, I do want to, oh goodness, Councilmember Hill, oh, here you are. I do want to let you all know that I was very successful in speaking with Atlanta APD with Major Tyus at the time. He was our Zone 4 commander, and APF about cameras. And so what we did was we had a community meeting and talked about the heat map so that we can get a list of all the places that everyone wanted a camera. Understanding that everybody's not going to get their camera, we just wanted to see where people thought cameras should be. We used the heat map. We worked with Atlanta Police Foundation, and 60 cameras later, I know exactly where my cameras are. I know where my gaps are because they're very open to walking through that process with us, and they have been tremendously helpful in the zone. So I want more. So I'm hoping that this particular budget will allow for more cameras because my list is still not complete, but I definitely see the advantage and the of knowing exactly where your cameras are and where the gaps are and how well they're working. On page 9, your FY24 priorities, I think that they are extremely thoughtful. I love that we're focusing on one safe city, a city of opportunity for all, a city built for the future. That's paramount, and ethical and efficient. So if this is what we're funding, count me in. And I just want you all to know that the way that you've gone through each bullet point really does let us know exactly the work that we need to get done. I am willing to use this budget to make sure that this priority page is fulfilled. I am desperately hoping that we can get more sworn officers out on the streets and in the communities, because I think that District 11 has truly the mindset is changing slowly but surely, especially from 4 years ago, on how we're actually interacting with our police officers. They're coming to so many events. They're being helpful. They are responding quickly, and I just really like the change that I see. So I want more of that as well, and I'm glad that this particular budget priority is focusing on those kind of things and not just getting the bad guys. That's important because crime is real, but we are really creating a holistic and comprehensive way of getting our public safety to our constituents, and I appreciate that. So about the actual budget ask, other than the sworn officers, I do want to know how many more officers do you think that we can realistically look forward to having in this actual budget year?
Our goal is to, again, last year we hired 225 officers. Our goal was to be 250. We're going to try to get 250 this year.
Okay.
Because we want to be back to our strive to be back to our authorized strength by the time we host the World Cup in 2026. So that's going to be a two-pronged process. Council member, it's going to be keeping who we have here on the Atlanta Police Department. So we have to be heavily on retention, and then it is growing those numbers. So our goal is to bring 250 on board this year. Now, keep in mind, we start an academy class every other month. Is when we start. That class is generally, we hope to be around 30 is what we try to do. We still have to, we can't rush the process. And so our goal is to, I believe, to graduate around 112 this year from our academy is the number we want to graduate this year. From that, there'll be some that we hired last year, right, and some that we hire this year. Would be to get those out on the street is what we're shooting for.
Okay. Well, that sounds fantastic because that's crucial. Like, we really do need a very hardy police force so that we are being community partners and that we can actualize and realize this page 9, because this looks like something that we should all be excited about going forward. One more thing, we want to, oh goodness. I'm going to leave that. That's going to be it for me. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the presentation. I also want to offer my thanks for all the work that's been done and for all the work that's done every day. I want to start first by saying how excited I am to see a Kager in a presentation. Peter, I'm going to give you full credit for a Kager in a presentation.
Yeah, that was me.
That's excellent. I'd love to see more Kagers in the future. If you know, you know. I want to start with page 8, just to ground us a little bit. You touched on this a little bit, Chief, but the three categories here that are seeing year-over-year percentage increases that are pretty substantial are the purchase contract services, the interfund charges, and the other financing. Could you just again state just clearly in those three categories what's or in any one, what's underneath them, just a little bit of a bullet point, why those three categories are moving up significantly?
I will, sir. I'm going to let our budget chief, Ms. Pascal, respond to that. I want you to get the right answer.
Sure.
In the right manner.
So the purchase contract services, the interfund charges, and other financing uses.
For the purchase contract services, the increase has to do with the increase in the Axon contract. Last year, there was an increase in the maintenance budget for the camera systems, and so that's why you see the continuous increase there. When it comes to interfund charges, as we add additional vehicles, obviously we have additional fuel and maintenance costs, and so it is adjusted based on, by fleet, based on the number of vehicles.
And then the other financing uses, which I think is also related to cars, but I want to.
It is. So
Okay.
It is the annual payment for the cars that were purchased during previous fiscal years and the current fiscal year, as well as the helicopters.
And then you may not have this number, but a lot of those categories and other places in your budget just look like they're inflationary increases. You're just reacting to an inflationary environment outside of salaries, just supplies, contracts, fuel, et cetera. Is there any notion of how much inflation has impacted this budget? I mean, if it's going up 10 million, would, a rough estimate, is it 10% of it's just inflation related, 20% of it? I don't know if you have that kind of handy, but.
We don't have that. The overall budget increase year over year is 4.7%.
Right.
So, obviously that's right about inflation, at least as we sit here today. There's a number of dynamics that make it difficult to strip out just inflation. You have the continuing officer effect, where you have new officers coming in that are getting paid less than officers that are retiring, and then offset that. So the bottom line is I don't have a good answer, other than we do see, every week there's a contract that comes in with some sort of price increase in the renewal or whatever is passed by council because of inflation. So it is certainly hitting us. Probably slightly in excess, this is just a guess, of baseline CPI, but we haven't noticed anything, sort of dramatically sort of inflation-oriented from a macroeconomic perspective.
Okay. But I guess the point that I'm making is last year we talked about things like camera maintenance. We talked about things like take-home cars. We're now seeing that reflected in the budget. And the budget actually is not increasing, to your point, it's actually not increasing as much as the overall budget for the city. It's kind of slightly less on a percentage basis, and it's kind of right in line with inflation. But a lot of what we're seeing in a year-over-year basis is actually investing in the things that we've been talking about wanting. So to Councilmember Overstreet's point, I appreciate the prioritization, because I think it's reflecting the conversations that we've had, at least while I've been on council, so thank you. I did have a few just specific questions. I was a little surprised to see the 911 budget staffing number unchanged year over year. Obviously, we've had a lot of conversation. There's been technology upgrades, which have been great in the E911 center. But this is probably for Mr. Amon. Could you just talk a little bit about that? I just want to make sure that continues to be a focus.
Yeah, it's very much a focus. I mean, everybody at this table gets a report every 8 hours on our response time in the previous 8 hours in the 911 center. So we are literally on that around the clock. As the chief said, there is going to be no degradation in capability. In fact, the opposite. We are passionate about hiring in our 911 center, just as we are in code enforcement. In fact, they've been added to all APD job fairs. We have 911 now in all APD job fairs. The slight decrease in the budget is all driven by overhead cost allocations. So it's a citywide overhead cost allocation issue, so related to pension benefits and other citywide charges. So it's literally an allocated cost reduction that's driving that.
So just to close that out, you feel like that you have the budget that is needed to continue to not only provide what we have, but to improve the E911 services?
Yes, we do. And should there be any issues relative to the budget in this space or any other space, certainly we would come back to the council for help. So, but we are confident.
Good. Just a quick question. If I'm seeing it correctly, I think the airport sworn number is due to decrease slightly in the year-over-year budget. I'm just curious why that is the case.
So in the current budget, they made the decision to move from looking at using recaptured employees, which actually those positions fall under civilian positions, and move monies from their sworn line. So you see it move from one line to the other.
Got it. That's helpful. Thank you. The take-home vehicle plan, which we're all very excited about, Chief, I believe you stated we're starting with those who live in the city. That's the first focus, and then sort of working out. How many folks live in the city, and when's our expectation that all the officers in the city would have a take-home car plan? A take-home car?
Yes, certainly. I think we're looking at approximately 200 officers that reside in the city. And now some of those may not necessarily be an FOD. So right now we have brought on some new capabilities to start turning the cars out at a higher rate. We hope to be around 24 a month that are coming out. So it's going to take us a little bit. Now the capacity to get we have the vehicles right now to get a lot of that done. It's just getting them outfitted.
Fitted.
Yes, and so that is a challenge other chiefs of police across the state are having. But we're exploring some unique ideas that we think can start speeding that up. Because ideally, we're in a position that by the time we come back before this body this time next year, you will see almost everyone that resides in the city that is answering 911 calls to be in that space. And we've got the cars to do it that are in the pipeline. We just need the outfitting to be done.
Great. That's very specific. Thank you. One of the things that we talked about with our friends from Fire and Rescue was that they have a challenge with the bottleneck of moving folks through their training academy onto their full-time force. And we talked a little bit about how we could potentially increase their capacity and sort of said if you find ways to increase your capacity for putting folks through, not by cutting corners, but simply by increasing that throughput, please let us know. I have the same question for y'all, which is, do you feel like there is a bottleneck in the move from application through to, and I know you train more than other folks in the state, and I'm just talking about the capacity to move folks from, accepted application to being full-time sworn on the force.
You're talking about the day they're assigned to the precincts.
Sorry?
You're talking about the day they're assigned to the precinct, president?
Right.
Okay.
Basically through that entire training cycle. Do you feel like there's a bottleneck in that process or a capacity issue in that process?
Well, we're fortunate on the training side. Once they are assigned to a class, we were running generally 4 classes at a time, and they're about 30 days apart. So about 4 weeks apart in the training curriculum. We actually have the ability that if an individual is not performing in an area that we deem to be proficient, but we still believe they have the ability to be a police officer, to serve the city, we actually reassign them to another class that is moving along. So we are unique than the fire department. We also do not have the fire department's regulatory commitment around medical training that they do. So they're meeting a regulatory commitment for fire training and medical that the police department does not have. And so our ability to move recruits into those spaces allows us to be much more flexible. And obviously what bottlenecks we have is basically around, do we have access to certain training areas that we have to depend on the state for or a neighboring jurisdiction? And so that's where the bottlenecks would be. Do we have to wait until EVOC pad is up and available? And do we have to pause and wait 2 more weeks when we really wanted to do it this week? So getting into those unique spaces that are required for us to be able to continue without any delay, that is where it's going to be. And we know that is underway to be corrected. And so we're excited about that. As it relates to the process of actually doing the paperwork and hiring, we've had some good progress this past year of realigning how we process. Like we assign more personnel to our background recruitment to make sure we in no way sacrifice on the quality of the candidates. We keep them moving.
Got it. That's helpful. And just to close that out, it does not sound like that more funding would unlock some of those bottlenecks that you face. It sounds like those are logistical capacity that you don't control, the city doesn't control. Kinds of things. Okay, good. 3 questions just very specific on budget. How much, if any, dollars are dedicated to the co-responding pilot in the budget?
I do not have the exact number for that, President. We can get it for you. Obviously, it's 6 individuals, so it's the salary and the benefits at those 6 individuals. The rest of them will be supported by the existing 911 infrastructure, the CAD data that we were able to generate to say when should they be working and what areas should they be working in. The vehicles that they will ride in will be Atlanta police vehicles. The personnel they're working beside are human resources that will be in roll call every day. So the specific would be the salary of those individuals, and we can get that for you. The rest of the department will support that.
Got it. The Police Athletic League, is there a specific funding for that program this year?
That is our personnel. So we have a dedicated group of men and women that are assigned there, some sworn, some civilian. That is reflected in the HR, the personnel line item. Obviously, what they need, the Parks and Recreation Department provides the facilities that we operate out of. The equipment needs we have is provided within the equipment portions of the police fund of the budget, and then some fundraising that we do independently of the budget through our Guns and Hoses and other initiatives. So that is there. We still need young people to sign up for our programming, and so we do have a need in that area that we can communicate to this body to help us recruit.
Good. And then the civilian traffic unit, is it specifically funded within the budget?
What is funded in the budget is the personnel. The equipment will be provided through the police department as well. Then they'll respond through our radio network that we have.
And remind me the number on that for
12.
12. Yeah. Thank you. And then one last question, just that's slightly off topic, but I just want to make sure that we put it on the record. The training that is delivered by the Atlanta Police Foundation, correct? For officers. Who delivers the training for police recruits? Let me put it that way.
So, and remember, training is not just for the police recruits,
Understood,
right?
yeah.
It's for every day. We're going to attend training here soon. It is provided by the Atlanta Police Department. So we are a regulated and accredited agency. So we must meet standards that have been established by the state of Georgia, the Police Officers Standards and Training Council, that says this is what you must train to be certified in the state of Georgia, and this is what you must train on annually to retain that certification. So the state establishes those protocols. We must assign post-certified instructors to teach the classes for those training credits to apply. So our trainers are Atlanta police employees or individuals that we have contracted for a unique skill set that we need the assistance on. And that may come from the federal government, may come from the state of Georgia, it may come from the private sector. Our APLI leadership training comes from across the spectrum. We bring in national subject matter experts. We train closely with the International Association of the Chiefs of Police. They provide the core curriculum, which we use. And then we also bring in individuals from right here in the city. So where the Police Foundation trains no one, what they do is provide funding to allow us to bring in individuals that it were not for the Atlanta Police Foundation, our officers would never be trained by the best in the business. So when we look across the country to say who teaches this the best, who is groundbreaking in this area, or who has the ability to make us groundbreaking in that area, sometimes it is the Police Foundation that makes that happen. Otherwise, we would not be able to bring those quality of instructors right here to our city.
Understood, but that's the point I'm trying to make. Fundamentally, the police department is the one that is deciding, designing, and responsible for training, right?
That is correct.
And the Police Foundation is simply providing additional connections or funding for the training that you have decided, because you're either required to by the state or you have decided it's in the best interest of the police department to do.
That is correct.
And just for clarity, you're the chief, you report to the mayor, so the training of the police exists within the city infrastructure, right? It is basically the city itself that is doing the training, is responsible for the training. That is who the citizens should look for to when it comes to how training decisions are being made.
That is correct. We are a regulated industry, and we're an accredited. Remember, there are 18,000 law enforcement agencies in the country, President Shipman. Only 700 of them are accredited. Only 700. So we are guided by our accreditation of what should be taught, how it should be taught, what should be present within the structure of our police department to remain that distinction of being an accredited law enforcement agency. So we are guided by guidelines that define best practices, what is required by the law, court proceedings and court findings and court decisions also guide us. And so we do appreciate the funding support, but all day long it is what's best for the city and what is required of the city.
Thank you. Let me just close by saying that I am very excited about the Citizens Traffic Initiative. I'm very excited about the Co-Responder Initiative. I am hopeful that those pilots will prove fruitful and that we will find ways to expand them as we move forward. So thank you for being willing to innovate. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Sir, Shook, then Boone.
All right, I'm the one that takes this over. I'll be extremely brief. I'm going to ask for some data points. That's going to require some research. If you could just shoot an email to me, that'd be fine. I'd like to know, starting with this budget and going back to FY21, what your budget for camera maintenance is. I'd like to know L&P's budget, same time frame. I'd like to see any stats you have that are around recruitment and retention during that time frame, because I'm sure hoping I'm going to see significant improvement since we've made the investments we've made. Ooh, I'd like to see the number of false alarms y'all are chasing around during that time frame, as we've tried several times to reduce those incidences. And then finally, a question. If I'm out of town and my home security system pings my phone and lets me know that there's an intruder there, who do I call in lieu of 911?
And you are out of town?
Out of town.
So we can provide you, your alarm company should have the 7-digit number online to be able to alert us. They can alert us in two ways. They can send, depending on who your alarm provider is, some of them have direct access to our center to create what's called a CAD. They send it to us digitally, that there has been an activation at your home. This is what they're seeing on the cameras, or this is what the system is telling us. Or they will call us on a 7-digit line and provide that information. We can give you the number, Councilmember, if you want to make sure it's getting there quick enough, you want to call in. But look and see what your alarm provider is providing. But we do have a 7-digit number that can be called to access the 911 center, because if you call 911, unfortunately, you're going to get the local jurisdiction that you're visiting. And that has been an issue in the past. But we do have a 7-digit number. Let's make sure your alarm company has it, and we'll make sure that you have it.
Thank you.
All right.
She's on the phone. While we're waiting for her, the camera data or the expenditure, I'd like to look at that as well, but specifically understand what we spent in FY23, which I'm assuming is kind of a catch-up year, and then what it looks like for FY24, and then and what the projections are, because I'm assuming we took on a bunch, but there'll be we're going to continue to take on annually more, as well as repairing and maintaining what we had before. Councilmember Boone, are you ready for your questions? You're up.
Quickly, because I know we are waiting on our solicitor. Chief, I just wanted to thank you for personally coming out to the Sitco on ML King. You've been out there multiple times to check on that location. Also, you were, the neighbor saw you at the yellow store checking on that area. We appreciate that camera. I think it moves around. That's been very helpful, and hopefully we can get some good results. We have some great commanders, Zone 1 and Zone 4. They have just done a magnificent job in those locations. So if you all would just continue to put that on your priority list, we really would appreciate it. But my comments are that you personally came out, and that is really appreciated. Thank you.
You're welcome, ma'am.
All right, we're going to try and wind this down. We got Hillis, followed by Amos, and then I think that should be it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm back, Chief. So on Monday at 11 p.m., I introduced some papers that I feel specifically will help with our recruitment efforts and officer morale. Those will be going to public safety and FEC in the coming week, so we can have larger discussions about those. But related to one of them is specifically to help try to bolster our lateral officers, and that is the officers that have left and found out the grass is not greener on the other side. We obviously want them back at APD. So one of those is an ordinance, because it's actually written in the city code about sergeant testing. And if the department and you as the chief end up being on board with that and we approve that, then it would be incumbent on you to change the policy for investigators and senior patrol officers. Are you in agreement that would help us bring more laterals back? And then what other items in this budget specifically do you believe will help bolster the number of laterals we get?
So I've not read the legislation specifically, so I want to withhold commenting on the legislation. I will say this: we believe that growing the department back to its authorized strength, at the core of that, besides keeping who we have, is bringing on laterals. We're able to already have an ability to have insight into that individual's characteristics and their capabilities, to know whether they're suitable for this department and to protect our cities. And then we are exploring anything that allows us to be competitive in the area of returning officers that left us. To use your phrase, to learn the grass wasn't greener on the other side, the opportunities were not present. They weren't protecting the vibrant communities that Atlanta has. And so we're open, I'm open for anything that allows us to be competitive over our neighboring jurisdictions and others, and to be able to bring individuals on. So I'm exploring that. We're working with the union. We just recently met with the union and brought up the very same issues, because we have to balance the morale of the officers that are with the Atlanta Police Department, that have remained with the police department. And I do believe we can find that common ground, that we can bring laterals on in a manner that grows the department more quickly, stabilizes the morale of the agency. So we're excited to look at the legislation and see where we can find opportunity to partner.
Thank you, Chief. And two other incentives that I introduced legislation on to hopefully make part of this year's budget, as also, it's not just that base salary, but also more incentives and trying to align us with other departments. So one is initiation of a FTO, or Field Training Officer program. A lot of departments have that. Right now, what we say we're making our largest investment in, and that's training. However, we're not compensating our experienced officers who spend time training our new officers. So again, that will come up also in public safety and FEC next week. And then the other one that I know a lot of departments offer across the country, here in the metro area, is shift differential, because these men and women of the department are having to put certain parts of their lives on hold, spend time away from their families, their children, to work evening shift or morning shift. So, not specific whether you support the legislation or not, because again, I don't know that you read it, but with those two incentives, do you think that would be helpful with APD and recruitment and officer morale?
While we are working with the HR on the pay and class study, and items you've just described as something that we put forward has to be explored. That is being done in other jurisdictions and areas, because I believe, since we're the largest law enforcement agency in the state, we should be competitive in every area that we can be. We know the administration has been supportive of us on that. Anything we go to them with to say, let's engage in this action to be able to recruit, the administration has done so. That's from the pay raises, the retention bonus, and the take-home car program. So anything that we can come to an agreement on, council member, that allows us to keep who we have, bring the talent here to Atlanta, Georgia, then we're going to be supportive of that. And I haven't read the legislation, but I look forward to reading it. Okay.
Thank you so much.
All right, Councilmember Amos.
Be very quickly, thank you for you and your team and everything you're doing. I'm glad to see a budget that is not only beginning to take care of our officers, sworn and unsworn, financially, but also taking care of the morale as far as their workplace. And we'll talk to Dean about that, because I understand that that's not directly in your budget, because we have precincts that are just, we can do better in, put it like that. And definitely, actually, the president hit on one of my last questions about the build out of PAL. You talked about that. You specifically said building out PAL. I like to know what that looks like, but I see it. Thanks for the org chart. I see it falls upon the assistant chief, so I'll make a date, sit and talk to him. But we done had this budget book for about a month now, and there has been some major events in the city. Is there anything different that you look at this book today and say, I wish I would have funded more, or I wish I would fund less? Speaking about how rapidly law enforcement and crime prevention changes, is there anything different you would do now that is not in this book?
That's a good question, Councilmember. And there was not, if we look at what's happened since you've had the budget book, we have mitigated those emergencies for three reasons: the quality of the men and women that serve the city, our civilian and our sworn on the police department. We've mitigated those through our technology infrastructure that was in place, and we mitigated those through our partnerships. And within this budget, it gives us the ability to continue to keep who we have and grow the police department. It continues investment into our technology, and it makes sure that I have what I need to ensure our partnerships with the federal government, our county, the local, or the state. We have the ability to continue to grow those partnerships, contribute to our task forces, be able to do intelligence exchanges, and provide resources for joint operations. So it gives us the ability to continue to do those three things, which has been instrumental for us to be effective for the city. You're welcome.
Thank you. In the interest of time, I will do the same. I need to set up a separate appointment, talk offline with you. The area that I want to focus in is on license and permits, both staffing, authorized positions, vacancies, and really making sure that we provide the appropriate resources, given how that might also help solve some of the challenges that our communities are facing. I will just end with a thank you as well. I think there is a shared appreciation for the work that you and the entire Atlanta Police Department provide for this city. It wasn't lost on me, all the events that you mentioned, particularly when our concentration of number of people surges during Pride Festival, Peachtree Road Race, and I throw in Music Midtown, and I throw in the Dogwood Festival. Most of that is centered in my district in Piedmont Park. It's just really assuring to know that we will be safe, because y'all are coordinating, you're planning and anticipating, and really building the relationships with the neighborhoods and communities to keep us safe day in and day out. So I want to close with that. Thank you. We got a number of follow-up items, questions and information that council members requested, but it was a great presentation, so thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
All right, so as they step down, I'm going to ask the Solicitor's Office to go ahead and come on up. We'll transition as quickly as possible and keep moving on with the next presentation.